is nothing more chilling than when a villain turns into a hero and it's actually believable. The truth is, not every redemption arc is believable, but the story of Zuko's is. And here are the 5 reasons why. Hi everyone, my name is Maria. Welcome back to my channel where I like to discuss all things StoryTube here. So I like film, TV, books. If you're interested in that type of content, subscribe to my channel because that's what it's all about. The redemption arc of Zuko's is one of the best written redemption arcs I've personally ever witnessed. And as I look back on the show, I realized that there were obvious signs that pointed to the fact that this character will likely one day be redeemed. And a disclaimer, listen, Zuko did a lot of crazy things, like a lot. But to be honest, that's what makes his redemption arc that much more fun to watch and witness because of the fact of how crazy he was and how many bad decisions he made. So the first sign that pointed to the fact that redemption was on its way for Zuko was Zuko, our antagonist, shared common enemies with our protagonist, Aang and Team Avatar. I mean, Commander Zhao, anybody, the pirates, Azula for majority of the show, and oh yeah, of course, Fire Lord Ozai himself. All of these characters have been Zuko's enemies and have been Team Avatar's enemies. So when the supposed antagonists of the show and the protagonists share enemies, what this does is cause us as viewers to inevitably root for the antagonist. So now we're rooting for Zuko. Remember the episode of The Blue Spirit, which was such an amazing episode, by the way, like just beautiful. It's just a vibe. You know what I mean if you know what I mean. Well, the craziest part about this episode is we actually started to root for Zuko to save Aang, because technically Zuko was the only person who knew what was actually happening to Aang and that he got captured. So we went from saying, oh, we hate Zuko, to Zuko save Aang. That's the start. So when Zhao actually did capture Aang, it's Zuko who becomes the Blue Spirit and saves the day. I mean, no matter what the reasons, no matter how selfish the reasons were, Zuko saved Aang, and he stopped the potential demise of the Avatar. And this was the first tick on the spectrum of what could make him either a hero or just a little less of a villain than the others. I mean, let's be real, we all were rooting for Zuko that episode. The second sign is that Zuko's villain meter is significantly smaller than other villains because of the fact that we actually sympathize with Zuko in the fact that he has such a tumultuous and messed up relationship with his dad. From the moment that we meet Zuko, we see that he has a scar on his face, and we quickly find out this scar happened because of his father. I mean, who wouldn't feel sorry for Zuko here? Now, obviously, most villains have a sob story. I mean, typically. So becoming a villain literally just comes down to choice. So what makes Zuko's tragic story any different? Well, it's not the fact that he has a sob story that makes it different. It's the fact that we're not just sympathizing any longer. We're actually wanting justice, and we're starting to hate every other villain who's ever done Zuko wrong and other people wrong a little bit more than we hate Zuko himself. So his villain meter is probably the lowest on the list in the Avatar world by the time we keep learning and meeting new villains in the show. So the sympathy we have for him, the fact that we want justice for what's happening from his father to him and what happens from his sister to him, it literally just puts Zuko lower on our list of like problematic people that need to be handled. Except for maybe in book 2 when Zuko finally just kind of made the worst decision of his life when he went against the Avatar and Iroh. That was probably the one time I said, well, dang, maybe this man is not getting his redemption arc after all. But to be honest, that made it even better because when he finally did turn good, it was like all on his own. Like he did what he needed to do and he got it done. So while we absolutely view Zuko as a villain in book 1, the diabolical nature of Ozai starts to come more and more into revelation, and it genuinely just pushes Zuko way lower on our scale of villains. Where he could be ranked a high 100, Zuko was probably a low 30. The third sign is, in the Avatar world, if you've noticed, no unredeemed character ever had a love interest. Love interests were only for heroes and anti-heroes. So anti-heroes like Jet with his interest in Katara, or even Mai, because technically Mai became redeemed, and her love interest was obviously Zuko. Okay, so I'm currently editing this video and I realized I need to make a clarifying point. Mai is absolutely positively an antagonist, just like Zuko. So if anything, she's probably the only other person who I could even make any of these claims about. Well, not all of them. no, definitely not all of them. Only this claim, the love interest claim. And that's because obviously her love interest is Zuko. So she becomes a redeemed character. She's not a hero or anti-hero. She's just a person who's an antagonist who becomes a redeemed character. But this video is not about her. However, the point is that only like people who stayed villains by the end of the show, they were the only ones who had no love interest, if you realize. So there we go. Okay, bye. If you notice, Zuko was the only antagonist slash villain who had a love interest. I mean, characters like Azula, Zhao, Longfang, Ozai, even though Ozai technically had a wife, but clearly he didn't care about his wife, so that's not really a love interest. Duh. But they had nobody. And okay, yes, Azula had those 5 seconds with that one dude. But the moment she literally started talking about dominating the world, ruling the world, and taking over, that man ran away. And Azula was all alone. We got to see a vulnerable side of Zuko with the fact that he had love interest. I mean, the episode in book 2, when Zuko finally goes on a date, he goes on a date with like an Earth Kingdom girl. We're all like Iroh's reaction at this moment. We're like hopeful that Zuko would realize he can have fun, hopeful that Zuko can realize that like he can be lovable and that he can be liked. And Zuko actually enjoyed himself that night, which was crazy. And everybody knows watching it, you had a smile on your face, a smile for this villain, technically, because after all he did in book 1, you're kind of supposed to be mad at Zuko, but at this point our hearts had been getting beat up to love him. So yeah. And okay, yeah, villains can fall in love, but specifically in the world of Avatar, I think it's just a fun fact I noticed. Like, wait, no villain in Avatar The Last Airbender's world had a love interest. Only heroes did. So to me, that's like a clear sign that Zuko was going to be on a path for potential redemption. Also, it showed just a vulnerability that only heroes went through, just allowing themselves to have a love interest. The 4th sign was definitely his relationship with Uncle Iroh. A common sign for redeemable villains are their relationship with people very close to them, and if that person or people are good or bad. In this case, Uncle Iroh was like wisdom personified with a complicated past, but definitely a good heart. His love and sacrifices for Zuko was literally Zuko's lifeline on the show. I mean, I think Uncle Iroh was the only person who actually loved Zuko unconditionally throughout the whole show. Every evil character who has this close person in their life who is good ends up forcing them to evaluate their own moral compass. Iroh challenged Zuko, but yet he gave Zuko the time and space to get his act together on his own. And we all know Zuko needed to get his act together. But for every good decision Iroh made, it kind of made us look at Zuko like, okay, are you going to make a good decision too and be more like your uncle? Like there's this standard that you see by somebody who cares about you and is clearly on a better trajectory within their moral compass. Are you going to follow this person? Like it made us hold Zuko to a higher standard in our own world. Whereas if Zuko didn't have this positive influence, I don't think we would have held him to the same standard. Even with like Azula, we never really held her to a high standard because we felt like she was literally her father's child through and through. And she was. Whereas Zuko had this nature about him that seemed like it was separated from his father and that there was hope for him to have some good, which you could argue comes from his mother. Avatar Roku, if you know what I'm talking about. But okay. If you are familiar with the show Once Upon a Time, slight spoiler alert, the evil queen also kind of has the same situation. Her son, Henry, is absolutely good. His character is morally good. And he ends up challenging the evil queen's moral compass and challenges her to be a better person. So her redemption arc started to stem from the fact that this good person in her life was forcing her to reevaluate every decision she ever made and if she was going to keep going down that trajectory or if she was not going to. This is a lot like Zuko's situation. So yeah, shout out to Uncle Iroh because where would Zuko be without him? Where would the whole show be without Uncle Iroh? He was everything. Okay, so finally the last sign, and I'm sure there are multiple other signs, but specifically this one, it's 2 moments. Zuko did 2 really good things without any ulterior motives and without trying to better himself or to get any type of recognition. The first moment is when Zuko saved that little boy in book 2 from the Earthbenders at the time, like the Earthbending soldiers. Or not all of them were Earthbenders, but you know what I'm saying, the Earth Kingdom soldiers. Either way, Zuko saved the little boy, and he was doing it strictly to save the little boy, not to be, the savior, but just to help somebody. And 2, when he gave Appa back to Avatar, Aang, and Team Avatar, he literally could have kept Appa. He was going to keep Appa. But, oh my gosh, that scene was crazy because Iroh was basically like, you need to face who you are. Is this who you want to be? Like, make a decision. And Zuko let Appa go. 2 really good decisions he made without trying to manipulate anybody or to gain something out of the decisions. I mean, what villain in Avatar can you list that did 1, and not only 1, but 2 good things without an ulterior motive? Azula, Zhao, Ozai, Long Feng never made any good decision without that decision ultimately being for something bad. Only Zuko. Both moments showed us Zuko's true character, and we realized Zuko was actually facing a true internal battle of trying to decipher what was actually true versus what he believed to be true, and what was actually good versus what he believed to be good. In the end, the signs in the Avatar The Last Airbender really did point to the fact that Zuko was going to head down a path of redemption, and all of these signs together made for a believable redemption arc. It's like we always had a constant little nugget or piece that made us see hope for Zuko. So when the redemption arc actually finally kind of happened, we weren't surprised. We were very excited, and we were actually rooting for Zuko along the way. And it kind of reminds me of the song, God Bless the Broken Road That Led Me Straight to You. Except for in this case, it's like, God bless the broken road that led Zuko straight to his redemption. So good. And let's be real, when Zuko finally does turn good and he battles his father, oh, how was that amazing. Oh, what an amazing, amazing scene and just episode that whole situation was. Well, you guys, that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts. And I want to know, when did you start rooting for Zuko to be a hero? When did you start rooting for him to do good? Was it right away when you knew his sad, terrible story with his father? Was it later? No, I was actually against Zuko for most of the show until whenever. I'm very curious to know. But until next time, you guys, much love. Bye.